Hello and welcome to Faith in 5, where we explore religious, ethical, and philosophical concepts in 5 minutes or under. Today, we'll be looking at the issue of euthanasia. Euthanasia is the killing of a terminally ill person. A person who has a terminal illness is one that will not recover and will most certainly pass away. Euthanasia can be split into 4 connected categories. There's also a fifth one, which we'll explore later. There is voluntary euthanasia. This is where a person can ask for their life to end. They must be of sound mind and able to give their consent. There is then non-voluntary euthanasia. This is where the person is not able to consent, but you think they would like to die, so you kill them to end their suffering. Further to this, euthanasia can be split into active and passive euthanasia. Active is where an individual does an action that brings about the death of the patient. For example, they may give a life-ending drug or smother the patient to stop them breathing. Passive, on the other hand, is where there is an omission or failure to give the patient something. This could include not giving them life-saving drugs, taking away a food tube, or turning off a life support machine. It is important to know the different types, as in the exam, you could get given a statement such as passive euthanasia is more acceptable than active euthanasia, or only voluntary euthanasia should be legal. It is important to note that the term euthanasia should only be used if the person is terminally ill. Assisted suicide is where a person is unable to take their own life, perhaps because of a disability, yet their life is unbearable, so they wish to die. This is not euthanasia, as the individual is not terminally ill, so will not likely die in the near future. Tony Nicholson, pictured here, is a good example of this. Tony was an active man who was a keen rugby player. He loved to socialise and had a job that had him travelling all over the world. When on holiday in 2005, he had a stroke which left him with locked-in syndrome. He was completely paralysed except for his eyes. He communicated through an infrared screen where he would select letters by blinking to make up a sentence. This was a very time-consuming process, and Tony was so frustrated that his old life had ended that he wanted to die. He could have spent 30 plus years in this state with his family trying to care for him while he was in constant pain, as this illness was not a terminal one. Assisted suicide is not presently legal in the UK. Find out more about this story by watching the documentary Let Our Dad Die, produced by Channel 4 Dispatches. A link is on the left-hand side of the screen. Speaking of the law, active euthanasia is not legal in the UK, and it is essentially murder. Other countries, such as Belgium and Holland, allow it, and Belgium has even recently allowed a terminally ill 9 and 11-year-old to be euthanized. Dignitas is a clinic in Switzerland. Since 2005, over 360 British people have gone there to have support in ending their life. It is a charity, but on average, with fuel and accommodation costs, it costs a patient roughly £10,000. On average, one person from Britain travels to this clinic every 8 days, which includes appointments and consultations, as well as the life-ending treatment. This high cost is a source of argument, as some say that if you are rich enough, you can end your life, but people who have less are unable to travel to carry it out. They say it should be legalised to make it fair, thus allowing all terminally ill people, regardless of class, the ability to end their life if they wish. Some people might raise the question, what if you have gone with a terminally ill relative to a clinic like Dignitas and returned to the UK? Will you be arrested? The law is now more relaxed about this, and if the intention or aim of the family was good, as in it was to end suffering rather than kill, it is unlikely that the law will pursue it. Here are some of the arguments for and against the legalisation of euthanasia in the UK. They can be adapted to fit with any number of GCSE exam questions and are all non-religious. The following are in support of euthanasia. People have bodily autonomy. This means they have the right to do what they want with their own body, which includes death, if that's their desire. If you have no quality of life and all you experience is suffering, your life should be ended. We have limited medical resources. Should a hospital bed be saved for a terminally ill person who will die, or for a person who has a chance? For example, a young student injured in a car crash. People should be able to die with dignity. This means with their self-worth. If a carer has to help them with hygiene and using the toilet, it could result in them feeling worthless. It's better to die before this happens. As the Dignitas website says, we should be able to live with dignity and to die with dignity. Euthanasia frees the patient from suffering, but it also unburdens the family, who may have had to take time off work or suffer financially because of the patient. Peter Singer, the Australian ethicist, argues that a person in a vegetative state is not really a person. This means they do not have human rights, such as the right to life. He also points out that we euthanize seriously ill pets to stop them suffering, and points out that we are not as loving to humans. This, he says, needs to change. On the other hand, if a person is not able to speak, they can't consent. They may not want to die. If a miracle cure is found and you have killed them, you will experience unimaginable guilt. If we allow euthanasia for the terminally ill, we may then allow assisted suicide, then specific groups we want rid of, and so on. People could even use it as an excuse for personal gain to gain an inheritance faster. We should not build up a societal tolerance for killing. It breaks the human right to life from the Declaration of Human Rights. It devalues human life and makes it seem as if we are just parts in a machine, easily disposed of. Additionally, doctors take a Hippocratic oath to save life, not to harm it. This comes from Hippocrates in ancient Greece. At that time, no one trusted doctors, as they would be happy to take money from a patient, yet not care if they died. We need to be able to trust our doctors, so they should not be licensed to kill. Earlier, we argued that the terminally ill take up healthcare resources. We should consider that they have spent their life paying tax and contributing to them, so they have every right to use them in order to try and survive. Finally, they may not mean what they say. Even if a person gives consent for euthanization, they may be depressed or in a low mood. They might not really want to die. Those who are against abortion often argue that what is needed is good palliative care. This is end-of-life care, where a person is given maximum pain relief and is cared for as best possible. They will be able to spend their last days, weeks, or months surrounded by their family, experiencing the best possible end to their life. This would typically take place in somewhere called a hospice, and for many, it seems a better option than just killing them. As you have probably worked out, euthanasia is anything but simple. There is a further argument about passive and active euthanasia. While you can't actively take a person's life in the UK, even if they are terminally ill, you can still remove food tubes, which would starve them, stop treating them, causing further suffering, or turn off a life support machine. The ethicist James Rachels gives the following analogy to help us understand why the two are different, but possibly both wrong. He gives two fictional situations. Situation A: Smith will inherit a fortune if his 6-year-old cousin dies. So one evening he sneaks into the bathroom where the child is having his bath and drowns the boy. Smith arranges the evidence so that it looks like an accident. Clearly, Smith is guilty of murder, as he actively killed his cousin. Situation B: Jones will inherit a fortune if his 6-year-old cousin dies. One evening, Jones sneaks into the bathroom where the child is having his bath. As he enters the bathroom, he sees the boy fall over, hit his head on the side of the bath, and slide face down under the water. Jones is delighted and doesn't rescue the child, but stands by the bath and watches him drown. It's less clear to say that this is murder, as Jones has not actually killed the child. He benefits from the death, but he never laid a finger on him. This is the same as passive euthanasia, where a patient is left to starve or stop breathing. The thing is, if you use this argument in court that you did not kill a person and you just let them die, it will probably not stop you going to prison. For this reason, people argue that euthanasia should be illegal whether it is passive or active. At the end of the day, everything really boils down to intention. The doctrine, or teaching of double effect, links closely to this. If, for example, you give a person lots of painkillers to reduce their pain, you could kill them by accident with an overdose. Your intention was not to kill them, but reduce their pain. This would mean that euthanasia, if accidental, is acceptable. This argument can also be used for abortion, where your intention is to save the life of the mother, but to do so, you may have to kill the potential child. This is a non-religious argument, but it is also used by the Catholic Church. To confuse matters further, the fifth category of euthanasia is involuntary. Remember, voluntary is where you consent. Non-voluntary is where a person can't consent, or you think that they would want to die. And here, involuntary is where the person says explicitly that they do not want to die. Take this example. A soldier steps on a landmine. All that remains is their upper body. They scream to the medic to save them and help them live. The medic knows they will only last a few minutes, so he shoots the soldier in the head to stop the suffering. Many question if it can ever be right to kill a person when they ask to live, but this case makes it clear that there is no simple answer. To research euthanasia further, I have included a list of wider reading. These are found on the BBC Ethics Guide. Additionally, I've compiled a list of films and documentaries that centre around euthanasia and assisted dying. You can refer to these and quote them in your exam. There will also be an exam skills video for this topic. That was your faith in 5 or 12-ish.